Live pictures here, stage 18, 167.4 kilometers, coming to you a little later. The volleyball overrunning, but here we are with live pictures. They are running into Las Rosas today from Valladolid. Valladolid, one of the very, very earliest stations on the Vuelta's travels. Way back in 1935, Las Rosas only been to it a handful of times, really, in the very first stage that left there. Long, long time ago now, 1988, the year that Sean Kelly won. He won that one as well. It was into Collado, Villalba on stage 20. But today we have a group of riders away. They're allowed a big, big gap, about 8.5 minutes. It's gradually being whittled down as the top 10 general classification places come under threat from riders within the breakaway. Gerolsteiner and Cofidis working at the front of the peloton to drag the gap back. It has gone from about 8.55 down to 7.19 at the moment. Gerolsteiner did get it below that, but the group is fairly big, and Sean's got the full rundown of all the people in the break, and that's why it's working pretty well, and the gap's gone up a little bit because it is fairly big with some useful rouleurs in there.
Yes, certainly are, and it is a very big group, 18 riders, and we have Cuesta and Krohn from CSC, Dion and Jose Ruiz Sanchez, Dion, sorry, from AG2R, Garcia Costa, Ervetti from Castapang, Cyril Lemoine from Credit de Cola and Coast, Nicholas Roach, who was the best placed in the general classement at 1931, Landelus and Perez from Escatel, Vandendert from Frontiers de Joux, David Herrero from Galicia, Franzai from Liquigas, and Bettini we see very much to the front of this one and pushing the pace along from Quickstep, Fletcher from Rabobank, Greg Van Avermaet from Lotto, Grifko from Milram and Kirienka from Tinkoff, and the maximum was about the 8.15, and certainly a lot of very good rollers in there, but a lot of action also in the bunch. I think there's teams there who are looking at this classement and look at the riders up front, and as I say, Roach is certainly the most danger one at 19.5 minutes. The teams who now are up in the top 10 are starting to worry about him, certainly.
Well, if you've been waiting for the Tour of Spain to come on, our apologies for it running a little late. The volleyball, the women's volleyball between Italy and Russia, just running to its full extreme. And we are just under 30 kilometers to go, and this is a very big group with some very, very useful riders in it, as Landalusa, I think it is, goes with Grifko right in his wheel, and some very useful men in all sorts of ways in this group, Sean. We've got Greg Van Avermaet, who's made sure he gets into this breakaway group today to pick up points, which he did in the 2 sprints of the day. 6 points at the first sprint of the day at San Chidridan after 80 kilometers, and then at Villacastin at 100 kilometers he picked up 4 points on each of those occasions. Nicholas Roach was just behind him. The first the third man in the first sprint was Iñigo Cuesta, 39 years of age, and the second sprinter de Villacastin, the third man, was Juan Antonio Fletcher. They've just gone over the Alto de los Leones, which is one of the oldest climbs in the Vuelta a España. It's been around since the very first, I think, or very second Vuelta a España. Long, long, long drag, although it's only classed as a third category climb. And Paolo Bettini setting a pretty good pace up there. Franzoi probably the only one really having problems.
Yes, well, certainly Franzai looked to be suffering quite a lot there, but Bettini, it's impressive the way he was riding on the climb. He must have, been riding maybe 4 kilometers on the front, and everybody just happy to stay in one line behind them. We could see the faces of quite a few riders were suffering big time, and he looked to be just at ease there on that Alto de los Leones, and he's just getting better as this race go on, so very promising for the World Championships, of course. Not a great climber, and that climb, dragged on for quite a number of kilometers, so he's certainly in magnificent shape. But we can see here the attacks are coming out of this leading group of 18 riders. Not good for Nicholas Roach, for example, for the general classement. It would be better if they could continue on riding, but
I think
we
they've
see
realised that.
just, well, not realised. I think they're being chased from behind. These two were really giving it everything there, but now we see they're just slowing up once again, and this is where they're going to lose the valuable time advantage they have got, which is over 7 minutes as we come 25 kilometres about to the finish.
Yeah, not very far at all. Cofidis And Gerolsteiner chasing from behind. The people are under threat, of course, in the general classification. Oliver Zorg, the most immediate threat at 10th overall. He was lying at 10 minutes and 1 second, and it was getting a little bit close for comfort. David Moncoutier at 9:32. So between them, they've pushed along. Igor Martinez, of course, is just above them, but there are two Euskaltel men. This man, one of them, Alan Perez, in the leading group today. Absolutely classic day for a breakaway. This is the biggest group we've seen for some while. We have seen one big group in the Vuelta this year, but usually it's ones and twos. This makes the racing a little bit more exciting, Sean. Doesn't have a bigger group. Sometimes can be difficult to control, though.
Yes, well, of course, it's certainly a great advantage when you're out front in the break to have a big group, because a lot of men to ride and a lot of strong powerhouses, rollers as we say up here, and certainly, you know, they did not get away easy at the start of the race. It was very, very active and a lot of groups trying to get away, and some quite big groups, and in the first hour it was close to 50 kilometres an average per hour, so they certainly, you know, are going for big time today, and a lot of riders and a lot of teams want to get up into the break, to be in the successful break of the day and then try and go for a stage victory. And you know, we can see this group here, they know they have a big advantage, and now they're going to start thinking about the stage victory, which is not good for the men who want to move up in the general classement, as Nicholas Roach would want to do, try to keep these guys riding much closer to the finish and hopefully, you know, have that 6 or 7, 8 minute advantage at the finish line ahead of the bunch.
Just to give you a rundown on what the point standings were when they went over the top of the mountain, the Alto de los Leones. It's the only one of the day. It was Iñigo Cuesta from CSC who went over the top first, followed by Paolo Bettini. Then Jelle van den Dert, the Belgian, riding for Francis de Jure. You can see him just in the middle of your shot there in the white shorts. And then Alan Perez, who has just launched an attack off the front, the Euskaltel man. And that's nobody really challenging at all at the top of David Moncoutier, who's 143 points over Christophe Kern on 90 points, and then Juan Manuel Garatti on 89. But that's the way the points were picked up. The average speed has been a shade over 41, or shade under, should I say, 42 kilometres an hour for the whole of today. And Alan Perez going away. Good situation for Euskaltel to be in. They have two men. Lander Luther seems to be on a good day today. He's not been terribly well, Sean. He's been troubled with some tendonitis, I think. Is that right?
Yes, he's tendonitis. We see his arm was bandaged there, and he's been suffering for quite a bit with it, and you know, it's been causing him problems. His left hand, and it's they said it's more like something the tennis players have quite often. So maybe he's playing a bit of tennis after the stages, and he's getting that. But yes, it's certainly not in the arm that we would see the riders getting that problem.
Yeah, we were discussing actually before we were waiting to come on air. When you said he could be tennis elbow, we were discussing the great Bob Roll and what he used to do after stages. Indulge in little roller skating, I understand.
Yes, yes. Well, I remember it was in the 90s when I was riding with the PDM team, myself and Martin Early. We came down one morning for breakfast, still quite shaken after a couple of difficult stages, and Bob Roll comes in with his skates on, and we said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, man, I'm just doing 2 hours of skating." And I remember myself and Early, we just looked at him and we didn't know what to say, but you know, that was Bob Roll, of course, and anybody know him from his days on the road on a mountain bike, and he was, you know, he was a great guy, and you get great enjoyment from him. And I think the teams that he was in, he was certainly great to keep the morale and keep the morale high when you were suffering and when the team was getting tired.
He certainly does that. I think he still does that on OLN, or Versus as it is now in the United States, where he's working as a commentator. You hear his great booming voice across the television compound as soon as you walk in, especially if he's going on air. He's like, "Hello and welcome to our coverage of the Tour de France." First thing you hear him. But he's definitely a character. This is Alan Perez from Euskaltel having a go, and nobody's yet got up to his back wheel, taking the opportunity to get away while he can. And he's got another man in the break as well, in Lander Luther, who has not been in the best of shape, but seems to be feeling a little better today. Alan Perez has had a good Vuelta, actually, Sean. He's done a lot of work for Igor Martinez when he was wearing the leader's jersey. So I think he's had a pretty good Vuelta so far. The man right at the back is Ruiz Sanchez, by the way. That's the second time we've seen him this week here at a break. So he's obviously got the good legs in the last week of the tour, and some riders just get better as things go on. Right, we'll take a short break. They've got about 20 kilometres to go till the finish. And Alan Perez has a small gap over the rest of the bunch. Back live with the Vuelta, stage 18. About 15 bike lengths between Iñigo Cuesta and Alan Perez, and the rest of the group here being dragged along, it looks like, by either Roche or Lemoine. Two men from Crédit Agricole in this group, two men from Euskaltel, two men from CSC, so it's a good position for them to be in. Juan Antonio Fletcher coming through to take up the cudgel and go onto the back wheel of Alan Perez here. Perez just sort of sat up a little bit, waiting for Cuesta to come across, who's now ploughing away at the front of this group. Sean, there's a very handy bunch of people, especially there's some good riders who could turn in a decent sprint at the end, and a very, very tricky entry today.
Yes, well, it's certainly a dangerous one. The last final kilometres are not a great run in, and that last corner is, very close to the finish. I would say, 200 metres before the finish, a left-hand corner. So it's going to be very important. And the good thing, I suppose, we should see a number of riders out in front. I think this break will break up a bit more, and the number of riders trying to get away, as we see, it's happened already, and it's going to go on like that, attack after attack. They know they have that advantage of around the 7 minutes, so they're certainly going to, try and get away from the likes of Bettini, Greg Van Avermaet, very good sprinters, and the likes of Cuesto, he's certainly going to try, slip away, get into a smaller group and have a go for the stage victory, because if it comes to a sprint, he has no chance, like many others in this breakaway. So it's going to be just attack after attack from here all the way to the finish.
One of the riders in this breakaway, Paolo Bettini, was meant to stop yesterday. He said he was going to stop, but he decided to go on today for one more day, to say thanks to Victor Cordero, really, who's the organiser of the Vuelta a España. Last year, you may remember, in the last stage, he was meant to be wearing the points jersey, but they let him wear they called the sponsors, in fact, and said, look, go on, he's the world champion, can he wear the champions jersey? So they let him wear the champions jersey, and he's sort of repaying that. Attack out of the group once again. And it's going to be like this for the rest of the stage now, Sean. On and off, on and off. It's all right for these two teams. Another two teams with two men in the group here. And it's Lemoine at the front. And I think Erviti is the other. Well, Erviti is the other rider. And Kesapan and Crédit Agricole now pushing on the group. They're not going to get caught, there's no doubt about that, but how would you play it if you were in this group now, Sean? I mean, obviously it would depend if you had a team member with you or whether you didn't. Let's assume you didn't.
Well, if you haven't a team member with you, it's always more difficult in a big group as well. 18 riders are going to be a lot of attacks, and as we've seen here, and as we have seen with past number of kilometres, attack after attack, as we see Garcia Costa going for an attack here. If you have a teammate with you, well, then it makes it so easy, because one goes with one attack and then you wait. If that's not successful, your turn is the next one. But if you're alone, well, then you have to calculate it, and you have to look at the riders who look strong. But it's not always the case. The stronger riders don't find themselves in the leading group in the end, because a little bit of hesitation when the riders go into the attack, and you can slip away without being the strongest rider on the road on the day. And Bettini, of course, he's going to try and sit back there, go a bit to the rear, and maybe go hide a little bit, and if it comes to a sprint in the end, he has a very good chance. Van Avermaet, also the same situation. He's going to try and hide himself and not have to do too much here, because if you start chasing down riders when they go in the attack, well, then you're going to really suffer in the end, and it's going to be difficult to put up a good sprint.
And Van Avermaet and Bettini about 6 or 7 back, actually, locked together, right in the middle of that group of riders. Vicente Garcia Acosta is the man at the front, 36 years of age now, and looking behind him, and they all just come back together. Now once again off the front go Crédit Agricole. Is it Lemoine again?
Yes.
It is. Having another go. They're definitely fancying Roach for a chance today. You're back in the peloton. As I understand it from race radio, there's been a bit of a tumble. We'll have to go back and see if we can see if the director picks up those pictures.
I'm surprised to see the credit of the Cull riders going in the attack. Lemoine, we would expect him maybe just to try and keep the thing moving, but because for Roach, Nicholas Roach, to move up in the general classement and keep the advantage as much as possible, but with that number of riders out front, it's difficult to control. With 18 riders, if you have a smaller group, well, then you can continue on riding. But here it's much more difficult, and you know, maybe the stage victory is more important to credit at a call, and they're going to play the cards because you have two riders up there. You can do that, of course. One go in the attack, as I say, and the other one wait. And if it's not successful, well, then it's your turn the following one when the attack's gone.
The crash back in the peloton was involving Jürgen van Gulen. He was the only man who went down, apparently. We don't know whether he was badly hurt, but I suggest it was probably only one man. It may not be a difficult fall. Lemoine is being chased by Juan Antonio Fletcher by the look of it, and Erviti, possibly. Certainly one of the Case to Pam riders, and Juan Antonio Fletcher is the only Rabobank rider in the group, so that's him. But obviously Roach trying to improve his general position overall, but has a good shot at least staying up there in the first three for the sprint. We've got Bettini's very fast, obviously Van Avermaet is exceptionally fast and wearing the points jersey, but Roach has been sprinting pretty handily.
Yes, he certainly is, and he's had a magnificent race here. He's climbing very well, sprinting magnificently, and you know, in a group like this, depends on the end what happens, and you know, if it comes to the last 2 or 3 kilometres, of course the better sprinters are going to get nervous, and Bettini will, you know, start trying to keep the team together, and it will be, you know, up to him really to control the situation if we get into that last 2-3 kilometres all together. And that's where Nicholas Roach could, you know, just sit back and leave the other bigger ones do it. Van Avermaet as well, leave him do some work there, because he will be thinking, well, if I can get to that, you know, the final couple of 100 metres, well, I can win here on the sprint. And as a sprinter, you've got to, you know, make a bit of a more effort as a bigger sprinter, let's say, so that he could benefit from that and allow the bigger ones to do some work in the very closing stages. But I would be surprised if we get into the last number of kilometres and it stays together.
There is Bettini, just coming to the front of the rest of this little bunch now. Perhaps he fears Juan Antonio Fletcher's ability, and he's just ridden straight up to the back wheel of Lemoine. Here's a bit of a left field idea, Sean. I was just wondering whether Juan Antonio Fletcher was putting in the couple of digs in the last couple of days to see if he could go off the front of a fast-moving group. And for no other reason, to see whether he was perhaps planning something he targeted a day, get away with some people, and maybe see if he could get off the top of a fast-moving group.
Well, certainly, you know, we said that a number of days ago when he goes in the attack, the times he decided to do that, but maybe it was a little bit of a test, and to be able to do it, first of all, you have to be in very good shape, because in that final 10 or 15 kilometres, you have to, you know, be going well to attack out of the main bunch when it's going at a very fast rate. But he's certainly still in good shape to be in this one today, and I think everybody is up here today. They have to be still finishing this race very strong, because the way they were riding in the beginning, it was at a very, very fast rate. To get out into this break, you know, you would have to be really going well in the beginning of the stage.
Certainly going well. De Rivko now having a dig. The Ukrainian rider from Milram, a strong rider, can do this sort of thing. And likes to go on the attack, another aggressive rider. We haven't seen much of Milram in breaks, apart from Mate Yoko, through the entire Vuelta. Straight up to his back wheel comes Vasily Kirienka. Here's another danger man, Sean. If he can get away, they won't want to let him get away whatsoever. Van Avermaet straight onto his wheel, because Kirienka is a man who can just put his head down and could really blow some of these guys into the weeds.
Yes, well, certainly Kirienka, if you allowed him to take that 30 or 40 metres advantage, it's difficult to close him down, you know, in the wheel immediately. And we see Van Avermaet there immediately when he was riding, and he went to make an attack directly in the wheel.
Once again, Crédit Agricole coming to the front, and another attack going off. And I think it's Lemoine again. It certainly is. And this time he's got Juan Antonio Fletcher in his wheel. Remember, Cyril Lemoine had a very good Eneco Tour of the Benelux. He finished second, and only just second, to Ivan Gutierrez in the time trial, the opening prologue time trial. He was slightly aided by the fact he got wet, so he was in the dry, but even so, he hung on to that very well indeed, making sure he finished up with everybody else. And Lemoine got caught out on that day when the echelons were spread out all over the road. The wind caught everybody out. But other than that, had a very good Eneco Tour of the Benelux. Managed to keep going after that as well. Improve his position until he then withdrew with the rest, or nearly all of the rest, of the Crédit Agricole squad in order to prepare for this Vuelta a España. He stayed well on the wheel of Juan Antonio Fletcher. Doesn't want to do any work though. Come on, matey, come and do some work, says Fletcher. Harsh. He's been up there 3 times, Juan. But even so,
your one is not going to give him an easy ride up here. But certainly for you know, Lemoine up here to be with Fletcher, he's a good one. When he gets out here, he will ride, and you know, he will really dig in, and it's a good position to be in at the moment. Just the 2 out front, and the reaction, if they do not react immediately and they allow these 2 to take 10-15 seconds, it could be a dangerous move here.
And that's the gap as Kirienka drags them back. Well, it's slightly more animated than yesterday and the day before. It's slightly cooler as well here on the Vuelta. A little bit overcast. And this big group went away fairly early. Let's just run you through who's in the group again. It's Iñigo Cuesta as they all get back together again. Another attack goes from Alain Perez by the look of it. Iñigo Cuesta from CSC along with Carsten Kroon. One man we haven't seen up at the front at all yet, who's got a fairly decent sprint on him actually, is Renaud Dion of the AG2 Le Mondial squad. Then Jose Ruiz Sanchez, who I think is probably suffering after being out a long time yesterday. Vicente Garcia Costa, who's 3rd in line there, churning a great big gear along from K-Stepan, and here he goes on the right-hand side of your screen. Emmanuel Iviti, also of K-Stepan. Cyril Lemoine, we've seen just up the front with Juan Antonio Fletcher. He's really giving it a big dig, this one now. Garcia Costa, they won't want to let him get away, and Fletcher's burying his head to try and get over to him. Nicolas Roche, also from the Crédit Agricole squad, Inyo Landalusa, and Alain Perez of Euskaltel. Jelle van den Dert of Française de Jure, I think is just hanging in there at the moment. David Herrero of the Jacobo Galicia squad. Enrico Franzoi suffering like a dog, I think, for Liquigas. Paolo Bettini, Juan Antonio Fletcher. We've seen up at the front, Bettini, of course, the world champion. Greg Van Avermaet in the blue points jersey. Andre Grifko, who we saw attacking just now, the Milram rider. And Vasily Kirienka, who's shut down 2 gaps. I tell you what, he's got the bit between his teeth as Fletcher. He's a very dangerous rider. Garcia Acosta will know that as well. And he's certainly quicker up the lumpy stuff than Garcia Acosta. But that's a fearsome pairing. I don't think these guys will want them to get away any further than they are at the moment.
No, they certainly would not, and you know, Garcia Costa was really, you know, giving it everything out there, and Fletcher coming across from him. You know, there's 2 good guys out front. If they can really get together now for the next kilometre or 2 and give it 100% and share the pace setting, they could hold on. As we see Bettini, he realises well that is dangerous, but it's a marking situation, and as we see, they slow down once again, and if they do that now for, you know, another 10-20 seconds, this gap will grow as we see Kirienka going in the attack once again.
Yeah, he's going to try and drag it back again, isn't he? Kirienka, he's not happy. Well, it's unsurprising because Bettini pulled over to see who's going to come through, and Erviti was the man directly behind him, and Van Avermaet wasn't willing to shut anything down either. Those 2 are trying to tee things up for the sprint. Sort of hope against hope that somebody else like Vasily Kirienka will shut this gap down, and they have so far. Now, I think that might be, well, it is, I think, Lemoine again for Crédit Agricole, sitting in this group. And Nicolas Roche slightly stockier, although I tell you what, he's looking very lean. He's had a super Vuelta a España. And now it's Iñigo Cuesta closing the gap for Carsten Kroon's benefit. Eviti rejoins his teammate at the front with Bettini in the wheel. Then Greg Van Avermaet in the blue points leaders jersey, following Bettini very, very closely indeed. I tell you, who's getting a fairly easy ride is David Herrero here, Sean, from the Jacobo Galicia squad. We saw him doing some work on the front before we came live on air. He didn't look too troubled, and he seems to be just following the wheel of the big sprinters and just staying in there.
Yes, and there is a few riders who is not really showing it all. Carsten Krohn, we have not seen him doing anything either at the front here, and if you can do that, just get into a position there and go a little bit hide for a while and leave the other ones attack, and other riders to chase them down. You can, you know, do quite well out of this, as we see again. Is it Garcia Costa in the attack once more? Yeah,
with Van Avermaet directly in the wheel and Paolo Bettini following him. He looks over the shoulder, Garcia Costa, and eases up immediately. Herrero is closing the gap down to the wheel of Paolo Bettini in the World Champions jersey. Van Avermaet in the blue jersey of points leader. Now Herrero goes to the front, and it's his turn to attack. Who is going to chase him down? It looks as though it's Lemoine again, with Kirienka with him. Well, a bit of a wild card, this one, because he's just been sitting in there for the moment as Herrero. Lying 63rd overall, 1 hour 11 minutes down. So stage victory in the offing for him. Well, that's not a bad little move to make, Sean, and nobody really responding at all at the moment.
No, and certainly, you know, it's all to play for here, and 5Ks to go. We can see that just a little bit of watching and tactics going on here, and if he gets that for a little bit, you know, then you pull out that 10 seconds advantage, 15-second advantage. That is that's the great thing. If you can get, you know, the distance where the riders see are a bit further away and difficult to get across, but there's 1 or 2 riders here, 3 riders off the front of the group chasing once again, and it's the Case de Pang who is taking it up.
Yep. Eviti this time with, is that Kroon in his wheel? Oh, Cuesta, I think. Cuesta, and then Kirienka Fletcher right at the back here of that little group. This is David Herrero. Sat in that group. He's doing some work a little earlier. I think he just wanted to sit in behind the 2 sprinters and get a little bit of recuperation, because he knew they weren't going to chase anything down if they didn't have to. Herrero out by himself, 28 years of age now. He's been a pro for the last 6 years, this man. And he's been pretty successful in his career so far. He's had 10 big victories. The last one he had was a stage in the Tour of the Basque Country. Herrero is a very good all-round rider, but didn't have a win at all last year. It was a very barren period for David Herrero. And the only win he had the previous year was at the Euskal Bicicleta, which is the sort of big bike festival for the Basque region, where they have their own festival of racing. So a lean year in 2007. He was picked up by Jacobo Galicia, or Carpen Galicia as it was, and now looks to be in a bit more good shape. Sitting in there and just riding the wheels of Bettini and Avermaet. As I say, he's had a victory in the Tour of the Basque Country so far this year, and looking to make it 2. Van Avermaet gets over the wheel of Paolo Bettini. Fletcher is not going to help drag him. Bettini's going to have to do some work here, and Van Avermaet playing a good game. Will these 2 work together, Sean, to peg him back?
Yes, well, of course they have a lot of riders to peg back. We can see out front there's 3 other riders, so this group have really exploded, and you know, there's riders in 1s and 2s, quite a scatter on them now, and that tells us that everybody is starting to suffer. And of course all this attacking that in the past 10-15 kilometers is starting to, you know, pay now, and the riders are, you know, feeling, as we can see, small groups everywhere.
Yeah, it does look to me as though Herrero's really dug in hard. Nicolas Roche, I think, is the Francis the Credit Agricole rider who's just ahead of this group now. Herrero with well under 5 to go over the bridge, and the run-in is now quite difficult from here onwards, and certainly within the last kilometre it's almost coming to a dead stop and round to the left-hand side with what, 50 metres or so to go, Sean? It's not easy at all.
No, certainly not. And from this point in, there's a few roundabouts, but not majorly when you're on your own, as we can see here. But with a big bunch, it would be a much more tricky run-in. And this final corner, the left-hander, is about maybe 150 metres.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit longer out.
Certainly before that, at about 500 metres, there's also a roundabout. But with the way they're stretched out here, they're scattered quite well. It's not going to be a major problem. But in the bunch, if it was a big bunch sprint coming in for the stage victory, it would be a pretty dangerous run-in.
Well, how many times have we seen this? Running through areas which are still construction sites. There are tax laws, as I understand, all the way around Spain, which means that if you sort of partially construct a building, you don't have to pay the full tax on it, so they have to leave the top story unfinished. 2 kilometers to go then, and it looks as though Vasily Kirienka is the man who's shutting down the gap. And I think, is that Nicolas Roche who's got across, or is it Lemoine? It's very difficult to tell, and I don't see the other Crédit Agricole rider in this group. Lemoine has attacked 3 times, and Herrero is caught. So now they are 4. Vasily Kirienka is the man in the yellow and black. Eviti, I think, is the man from K-Stepan, and I think it is Lemoine who is in this group from Crédit Agricole in the green and white. He keeps looking over his shoulders and seems a little reluctant to do much work. I think he might be waiting for Nicolas Roche to come up if he can. Well, that's incorrect for a start. There's no Iñigo Cuesta up there. And what is the gap? There's one man stuck in the middle, coming across the points jersey of Greg Van Avermaet. Now sprints out of the remaining bunch, and there's one man in between him and the leading 4. Now Bettini goes with him. Bettini would be tries to go with him or just put a little dig in. But Van Avermaet's away. One man between himself and the 4, and that man has come up very quickly indeed, and he's got to tack onto them very shortly, with Kirienka pushing. That is Carsten Kroon from CSC, and as Sean was saying, we haven't seen much of him, and Kroon can turn in a fair old sprint. Good classics rider, and could turn in a good finish, a bit like Kurt Asler Arvidsson in the Tour de France in this sort of situation.
That is Roche.
It is Nicolas Roche's. Yes, it is. You can see it from the front here. Now, this is a very good situation for Roche. Herrero, Kirienka, Eviti and Roche in that order, and Kroon is trying to get up to their back wheel. And Roche digging in hard now to try and get to the line. Well, he's doing all the work. Kirienka trying to get on there. Eviti looks the best to me at the moment. The man from K-Stepan is going to come around the corner. Roche is dying on his wheels, is he, or is he coming back? And Eviti, it's going to be very, very close indeed. He just needs to push a little more, Nicolas Roche. Oh, that's a photo finish, but I think Eviti might have just got him on the line by about a half a wheel, Sean. He looked the best, and then Roche seemed to be coming back at him.
Yes, and Eviti started to struggle there, and Roche came back once again. But you know, what a sprint by Roche! He took it up very, very early, and I'd have a difficulty in calling. And I would say too. Roche got very close there if he did not win it.
Very close indeed. Well, he was bidding to do something his father never did, as far as we could find in the records. Stephen Roche's father didn't win a stage in the Vuelta. It is Eviti by about a half a wheel length. Oh, bitter disappointment for the Irishman. Roche second. But congratulations to Eviti. He timed it, he rode the wheel of Nicolas Roche. Was Nicolas Roche just a little bit too keen, Sean?
Yes, a little bit too early, because he certainly, you know, had it, because he came back once again at Eviti. If he had just waited for that little bit longer and, you know, start the sprint 30 metres later, I think he would have, you know, held on, because Eviti did get a great opportunity just in the slipstream of Nicolas Roche for a long time, and then when he came out, he had just that little bit of energy extra to take it. But, you know, what a comeback by Roche again.
Absolutely. What a Vuelta a España he's had with his father, Stephen. As far as I can make out, or if I remember, only rode one Vuelta a España back in 1992 when he went back to the Carrera squad. And I had a quick look up at it, and his best result was 14th on a stage, I think. Or 6th on one stage. 14th overall, 6th on one stage in the Vuelta. But Emmanuel Eviti taking the victory today ahead of Ireland's Nicolas Roche. Well, it was close, close, close for Nicolas Roche. About a half for wheel length. He was coming back at Emmanuel Erviti. But Erviti, who's only ever won one other race as a professional way back in 2004, now in the Tour of Navarre, he won a stage. Nicolas Roche, just a little bit too keen. You could see it on his face, Sean. He was desperate to pull something off of today. He knew he had a chance. He got rid of the other two big sprinters, Bettini and Van Avermaet. He knew he was in with a real shout today, and he just went that 25, 30 metres too early.
Yes, certainly just that fraction too early, and in a magnificent position, because to get away from Van Avermaet and Bettini, it was a great move, and to get into that, that final shake-up of a number of riders, it's not easy to do, and you have to have the legs first of all, but also you have to to calculate well, and sometimes a little bit of luck, but you have certainly got to have the power in the end, and he had that, but a little bit maybe got too nervous in that final straight when he see the banner out in front. When Erviti took it up, it was about 50 metres out, so certainly Roche took it up probably 130 metres, 150 metres maybe out, and just a little bit too early, because in the end he was starting to come back again on Erviti, and that was telling us that he was really strong in the end, but Erviti got the perfect lead out.
He is looking very strong for the World Championships, though, as long as he isn't completely shattered by the time we get there, of course. Nicolas Roche, picked for the Irish squad.
And of course he will make a good move in the general classement here, because this break is still has around the 6 or 7 minutes on the bunch, so he will move up quite a lot in the general classement of this race. So it's it's a great day for him, and is finishing very strong. Certainly does not look to be suffering fatigue, and getting stronger as the race go on, and for the World Championships it looks great.
Some riders do that though, don't they, Sean? Some riders dip in the third week. Perhaps a good example might be Alejandro Valverde. Probably takes a little bit of a dip somewhere towards the third week. Sastre, another rider who traditionally gets still rides strong into a third week. Barry Hoban was probably the most well-known rider for just riding himself into form. He just got faster and faster, better and better as time went on, and maybe Nicolas Roche is going to be one of those sorts of riders that rides himself into better form.
Yes, well, of course, some riders always have problems, and it doesn't matter what they've been doing, through the season. But there is always the question: what sort of a season have you had, and how much races you have ridden? And of course, we all know with Sastre, he's had quite a difficult year, and especially with the Tour and then Olympics and all that goes with that, and he's probably suffering for a bit of fatigue in this time. But there's riders who can prepare well for a Tour and just do the right amount of racing, but still have problems always in the third week, and that is a magnificent advantage if you can get through the third week and still feel very strong. For a stage race, you can go a long ways, and you can do some very good results in the overall classement.
This is then the gap back to the peloton. It was Gerolsteiner and Cofidis who were trying to shut down the gap and make sure that their top 10 places were secure. I think they're going to be secure, as Gerolsteiner take it up to get it to the line now. Something about 7.5 minutes, which on my estimations would just about put Nicolas Roche up to 12th spot. So Oliver Zorg in 10th, and David Moncoutier will remain within the top 10, but still a superb day for the Irishman. As Ladagnou just coming over the line. You could see for Francis de Jeux, don't often see many shots of him, or haven't seen many shots of him in this year's Vuelta a España. And the rest of the peloton getting a reasonable ride, Sean, with two teams doing the work on the front, and they just sit in there and follow through.
Yes, well, of course, from the moment the break went away, but we have to remember that it was very active in the beginning, in the first part of the race before the break managed to pull away, and they were allowed to get away first of all, and then it was pretty easy going, and there was the teams we see Cofidis and Gerolsteiner controlling it. Of course, Astana did control for quite a while when the break was pulling away to get that 4, 5, 6 minute advantage, but yeah, relatively easy day I think for the general classement men, and the riders who are suffering, who are tired, they will be happy with the situation, especially when the break got away and it settled down. They would be always hoping that the break get away as soon as possible, so they get an easier ride.
So 3 relatively easy days for the peloton. Tomorrow, Sean, we've got 2 big mountains once again. The Navacerrada, a first category climb coming after 45 kilometers, and the Navafrira coming after 88.9 kilometers on the run into Segovia. It's only 145.5 kilometers tomorrow, but even so, it's going to be difficult as we see the run done with Erviti ahead of Nicholas Roach. Then this is the rest of the group. You can see how big the group was because it goes back all the way to Renaud Dion there in 18th spot. Tomorrow, do you think we're likely to see a surprise springing up?
Well, tomorrow is a day where we could see some problems. You know, the shorter stage and the 2 major climbs. You know, it's a day where you would be concerned as a general classement rider. You'd be getting worried that they could be a very difficult day and a lot of attacking from the riders in the general classement.
This is the general classification at 9 and 10, still Moncoutier and Zorg, and up to 13th in fact goes Nicholas Roach, just behind Marzo Bruzigin, but even more pertinently just ahead of David Garcia, who won the stage the other day to move himself up. So a great ride by the young Irishman, and I'm sure Stephen will be very pleased with that.
And he can do better than his father, of course. He finished 14th in the classement, so certainly he's in a very good position, Nicholas, to beat the father on this one.
Cruel, but fair. A win then for Emmanuel Inviti, the second of his career after a win in 2004, and second for Nicholas Roach, who moves up on the general. Looking down into Madrid. Not very far away at Las Rosas, scene of the World Championships 3 years ago, of course. And jolly nice it was too, and very hot. This year's World Championships from Varese in northeastern Italy. We will be there as of Tuesday onwards for the under-23s, the women's and the men's elite, all in time trial and road race. All live on Eurosport. Myself, Sean, Emma Davies, and studio, if you're watching in British Eurosport, studio back in London as well. Well, it's been a little bit more interesting day today than has been for the last 2 or 3 days, where they've had a pretty easy ride, the peloton. They are just a whisker away from the finale in Madrid on Sunday, and it is looking good for Alberto Contador. But tomorrow there may still throw up a few surprises, because we have 2 first category climbs tomorrow in a stage of 145.5 kilometers. And after the second category climb, the second of the categorized climbs, it's still pretty lumpy all the way into Segovia. I wouldn't be at all surprised if something happens tomorrow. And the last roll of the dice for some people who want to shake up the general classification. Well, our apologies if you were waiting for us to come on a little earlier. The volleyball just overrunning. The women's volleyball, Italy versus Russia. I hope you enjoyed that if you're waiting for this, and a good finish. And supporters of Nicholas Roach and Emmanuel Erviti will be very happy indeed. From myself, David Harmon, from Sean Kelly, and from the rest of the Eurosport production team, thanks for watching today. We'll see you tomorrow. Remember, don't go anywhere. It could be very interesting tomorrow before we get to the time trial on Saturday. Bye for now.